Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the virtual recognition ceremony of San Quintin National High School for the school year 2021-2022.
This year's recognition ceremony marks another milestone in the history of San Quintin National High School as it continuously delivers commendable performance in providing quality and functional learning modalities to address the learning needs of our diverse learners. The concerted effort, collaboration, and engagement of all the teachers, administrative staff, parents, and other benevolent stakeholders signify remarkable manifestations of upholding the ideals and aspirations of the school in pursuit of the attainment of higher learning outcomes despite today's situation. More than ever, we remain resilient and steadfast to support the learning continuity, notwithstanding the adversities and challenges we have been facing under the new normal education. And today, we will be recognizing our dear learners from grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, together with their parents who perform well and excel in their academic as a result of their sacrifices, perseverance, and passion for learning.
And to give her opening remarks, let us all welcome the head teacher of NAPA Department, Mrs. Rosalina C. Macam.
To our very energetic and hardworking principal, Madam Imelda T. Hernandez, equally intelligent and talented department heads, our teaching and non-teaching staff, PTA officers and members, headed by the very supportive President, Madam Jocelyn M. Norico, to all our respected parents, our dear learners, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to San Quintin National High School Recognition Ceremony for grade 7 to grade 9, the school year 2021 to 2022. Today, I feel honored and privileged to be in virtual attendance with you all and acknowledge the achievements of our brilliant learners who have made both the school and their parents proud. This program is held to recognize not only our dear learners but also our beloved parents for their immense contribution, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Indeed, part of your child's recognition must be credited in your behalf. On behalf of your advisors and teachers, I would like to extend my warmest congratulations to all of our awardees and their proud parents for a job well done. Mabuhay and God bless everyone.
And to give her welcome address, let us all welcome the Head Teacher 3 of Edukasyon sa Pagpapakatao Department, Mrs. Lailani Grace M. Reyes.
Recognition Day is the culmination of all hard work and a year of study. It is the day when our learners can say, "I've done it." It is an important milestone in your life. And today, we gather and celebrate success virtually. Each recognition day is not an end, but a new beginning. A time where we reap what we have planted throughout the year. At this very moment, we harvest the fruit of our hardships, struggles, and faith. But not everybody has made it to the top. But the ones who did are the ones called cream of the crop. So, to our honorees, congratulations! We are proud of you. In behalf of the teaching and non-teaching staff, headed by our inspiring and intelligent principal, Ma'am Imelda T. Hernandez, I would like to welcome you all to the San Quintin National High School Recognition Day 2022. God bless and enjoy the rest of the program.
And to give the inspiring messages for today's recognition, let us listen to our school's Division Superintendent of Pangasinan 2, Dr. Danilo C. Cesar, SESO 5, and to our school principal 4, Mrs. Imelda T. Hernandez.
Congratulations, awardees. It is with great pride and honor to have been given this opportunity as your leader, for I am truly proud of what you have accomplished this school year 2021-2022. You have not just excelled, but you have surpassed the tough school year brought about by the health pandemic. I commend you for your determination, hard work, and perseverance in learning hand in hand with current modalities. May it be modular, online, limited face-to-face, or blended. Experience these learning modalities proved to be a very big challenge on your part, and to be able to finish all of your school requirements on your own, despite various difficulties faced during the pandemic, is a big accomplishment. Congratulations for a job well done. My salute and gratitude to your parents, guardians, who, despite of their difficulties too, they have exerted their maximum efforts in ensuring that you continue your education at home and in school, in compliance with national government and IATF directives. May you continue to be inspired and be driven in your quest to finish your studies despite the trials you encounter. Continue to adhere to health protocols. Do not waver in your desire to learn. Instead, concentrate on fulfilling the dreams you have for yourself with the help of your parents and loved ones. Live each day with hope and love, holding on to the faith in your heart. Finally, may you live each day striving to become the kind of Filipino that our country needs. Again, my warmest congratulations to all.
My warmest and sincerest congratulations to all awardees for school year 2021-2022, and likewise to the proud parents as you all labored enough to achieve this remarkable moment of your lives. Today, we recognize the culmination of your years of hard work, perseverance, and dedication. Indisputably, this year is not like any other. You missed out a lot of opportunities due to the pandemic. Nonetheless, your future remains filled with endless potentials because if there is one thing that the pandemic has taught us, it is what really matters in life, that is to display courage amidst uncertainty. Be valiant in the pursuit of wisdom. Find the strength to dream courageously. Unearth passion with whatever you do and live a meaningful life. This is the moment you've all been waiting for to conquer this uncertainty, rise above your doubts, frustrations, and anxiety, and prove that your dreams are valued and worth the perseverance in your pursuit of the final goal, to receive an award victoriously. But most significantly, you must keep your heads high because being a student amidst the pandemic demonstrates that you are not conforming, but rather that you are driven by enthusiasm. Keep that fire in your heart blazing as you go to the next level of your life. I hope you keep in mind that the right perspective is needed as you confront your future challenges. The proper viewpoints leads to the right decisions. It will inspire you to be bold and move outside your comfort zone in search of new growth opportunities. It is my wish that today you will renew your sense of vision to make a difference in people's lives wherever you may be. Continue to create remarkable differences in your life as you will create divine inspiration and influence on others. Be purposefully driven with your own will. Take all the courage to soar up high and beyond. Always instill in your mind that education is a treasure within. It is a pearl of great price. It is a source of great value to your life and to others. Its importance affects and shapes your lives and future of society. By constantly looking inside yourself and bringing those God-given talents and potentials into good use, you can fully develop yourselves into well-rounded individuals. SQNHS, who are life conquerors and achievers. Again, congratulations to all of you. Mabuhay kayong lahat.
Let us now have the presentation of Academic Excellence Awardees from Grade 7, Grade 8, and Grade 9.
Here are the Grade 7 Academic Excellence Awardees for school year 2021-2022.
Madriaga Zea N. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ryan L. Madriaga. Ordinario Nicole Angeli A. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rodolfo S. Ordinario Jr. Kafirma Wency May D. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Edwin L. Kafirma. Evangelista Maria Samantha K. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mark Anthony N. Evangelista. Gambol Edril Nisi Nicole O. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Dennis M. Gambol. Cabe Junife P. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jovi P. Cabe. Kokya Prince Joseph E. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Alan Joseph I. Kokya. Garcia Erickson I. with high honors. Parent, Miss Heidi D. Imasa. Gutay Mark Bruce B. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ambrosio O. Gutay. Menes Cashlyn May S. with high honors. Parent, Miss Maureen Jane O. Sansano. Mogar Maria Antoinette Alexa D. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Somalin R. Mogar. Ramirez Queenie Del J. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Romadel A. Ramirez. Ramos Jehad C. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Haji O. Ramos. Salazar Yuichi Sky with high honors. Parent, Miss Quinilyn C. Salazar. Valeros Hannah Gwyneth T. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jason S. Valeros. Katabay Laika Jane O. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ramel R. Katabay. De Guzman Jill Chesney Apples A. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Frederick T. De Guzman. Domingo Kishi H. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Dixon G. Domingo. Estabilio John James S. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. John C. Estabillo. Laiko Bernie Joshua P. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Bernie R. Laiko. Piedad Arju O. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Reynaldo B. Piedad. Rivera Michael Angelo Valle M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Lorendo P. Rivera. Tamin Mariah Elaine H. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jonelle V. Tamin. Viernes Jana Angel A. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jessie Noel C. Viernes. Viernes Kyle D. Mark G. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mamerto C. Viernes. Aguilar Earl Andre E. with honors. Parent, Miss Ellen Grace N. Evangelista. Blanco Eugene S. with honors. Parent, Mr. Efren L. Blanco. Calderon Marian July C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Almario H. Calderon. Cruz Elijah Lucas C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Leo Roy E. Cruz. Estepona Mark Joshua B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Joseph O. Estepona. Gabriel Ralph Andre V. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Julio O. Gabriel. Hermoso Shekinah Faith M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Judy F. Hermoso. Hidalgo Marwin Jamier T. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mario B. Hidalgo. Leyte Reigns Esta V. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jomar A. Leyte. Lucena Lance Lloyd O. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Reynaldo L. Lucena. Manlangit Princess Rowan Alfred S. with honors. Parent, Mr. Alfredo P. Manlangit Jr. Opiniano Prince Harry C. with honors. Parent, Mr. Federico M. Opiniano. Oria Andrea A. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Aniceto O. Oria. Ornelia Ferlin M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Fernando J. Ormelia. Rabilas Maria Judea L. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jonathan L. Rabilas. Reyes Athea May D. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Atilano G. Reyes. Roldan Franz Austin Cyril L. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jane Francis P. Roldan. Valdez Bernadette L. with honors. Guardians, Mr. and Mrs. Freddie P. Leal. Veloria Eliza Luis B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Eric S. Veloria. Antalan Edlin Grace M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Edgardo E. Antalan. Barlongo Hart Eliza S. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Bonifacio G. Barlongo. Hermesis Divine B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Larry A. Hermesis. Ching Maxine Neriz R. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mark M. Ching. De la Cruz Princess Carla C. with honors. Guardian, Mrs. Francisca G. Cortez. De la Cruz Zion Paul G. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Steve A. De la Cruz. Drequito Renz Beyonce B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rodolfo A. Drequito. Estrada Charisse J. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Sofronio F. Estrada. Garcia Maricon Ashley R. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ruel R. Garcia. Guerrero Julio Marco with honors. Parent, Mrs. Jenny Lynn M. Guerrero. Marzan Louise J. with honors. Parent, Mrs. Domelita J. Marzan. Mendavia Mark Anthony M. with honors. Parent, Miss Winnie R. Marquez. Mones Angela Cristina R. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rolly A. Mones. Motea Jacqueline I. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hermenegildo F. Motea. Nesino Lance Windel B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Winlove C. Nesino. Ordinario Princess S. with honors. Parent, Mrs. Leia S. Ordinario. Ordonio John Kenneth B. with honors. Parent, Mr. Roberto C. Ordonio. Penalo Stephanie B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Joel L. Penalo. Reyes Joshua Rodrigo M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Atilano G. Reyes. Valdez Precious Jaira B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Johnny T. Valdez. Acosta Aaron Gabriel N. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ronel P. Acosta. Andante Jonard Andre P. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Arnold V. Adante. Bermal Stephen R. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Roy U. Bermal. Cabornay Mark JCT with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Joel L. Cabornay. Campos Angelo Daryl A. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Al G. Campos. Corpus Cindy C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Edwin T. Corpus. Domingo Princess Abigail C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Donato C. Domingo Jr. Tumondon Rian Angel C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Brian D. Dumondon. Emmanuel Lovely Joy G. with honors. Parent, Miss Mary Joy A. Gavina. Gagarin Alitea M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Michael L. Gagarin. Galgueto Prince John Dave B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Fernando S. Galgueto. Garcia Ivan Carl B. with honors. Parent, Mrs. Lori Crest B. Garcia. Hachero Marlon Jr. O. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Marlon E. Hachero Sr. Havillonar Mark Rainier B. with honors. Parent, Mrs. Irene R. Baniket. Magindra Raiden G. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mohadir C. Magindra. Pahe Princess Rhyme T. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Christian J. O. Pahe. Para Andre Kellen M. with honors. Parent, Mrs. Joel P. Manlangit. Kiming Hannah Lyra V. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Michael John M. Kiming. Ramirez Carlo III D. with honors. Parents, Mrs. Erica D. Toquero. Rebebes Carl Terence T. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Edgar R. Rebebes. Sipnio Mark Andre S. with honors. Parent, Mrs. Juliet S. Sipnio. Valdez Sapphire M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Arnold L. Valdez. Asho Princess Isles C. with honors. Parent, Miss Ginberly C. Asho. Bacani Cyril Jane C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rolando O. Bacani. Balbin Christine Joy L. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Marlo N. Balbin. Balbin Desiree M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jegos G. Balbin. Bernales Juliana F. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jomides Q. Bernales. Blando Prince Marlon C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Marlon B. Blando. Bumatay John Aljosh N. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. June de la Cruz. Cabe Raver Marie R. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Vergil C. Cabe. Kanilang Princess Jade G. with honors. Parent, Mrs. Jeanette G. Kanilang. Seron Mary Jane A. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Arnold C. Seron. Seron Mary Joy A. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Arnold C. Seron. Coderias Maria Cristina B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mando T. Coderias. De la Cruz Laika Shane B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Roy S. de la Cruz. Domingo Queenie Ruth C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Donato C. Domingo Jr. Escasinas AJM with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Alan S. Escasinas. Estrada Princess Chanel C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. James D. Estrada. Gamboa Ariel T. with honors. Parent, Mrs. Jeneline T. Gamboa. Herosa Jessie D. with honors. Parent, Mrs. Maribel D. Herosa. Gutierrez Christian Alvi V. with honors. Parent, Ms. Maria Cristina B. Ventura. Lianyo Zoe Jaline A. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Zosimo D. Lianyo. Maladaga Princess Jillian with honors. Parent, Ms. Leslie A. Maladaga. Maltu Fernan Justine C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ferdinand B. Maltu. Magumsha Ignacio Green A. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Brihildo C. Magumsha. Marquez Ronnie III with honors. Parent, Ms. Zenny B. Marquez. Moreno G. and Josh M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hener F. Moreno. Nabor GJM with honors. Parent, Ms. Jocelyn S. Medes. Oliver Luke B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rogelio E. Oliver Jr. Olpindo Liana Jazreel O. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Joey Marshall L. Olpindo. Opiniano Shaira T. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Anthony R. Opiniano. Piedad John Miko S. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Manuelito D. Piedad. Rosendo Felixander M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rolly P. Rosendo. Sanatana Jaika M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Arnello A. Sanatana. Sarigumba Yai Sofia Marie D. with honors. Parent, Ms. Zerchi Marie M. de la Cruz. Tan John Brian V. with honors. Parent, Mrs. Ana Lourdes V. Tan. Umadhay Kirk Xavier B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ariel Cesar Z. Umadhay. Urbano Charmaine Grace O. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Winston O. Urbano. Valino Ashley Yeshamin with honors. Guardian, Mrs. Claudia N. Opiniano. Vicente John Mark V. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Venzor E. Vicente. Villar Tishadine Alexis D. with honors. Parent, Ms. Geraldine D. Villar.
Here are the Grade 8 Academic Excellence Awardees for school year 2021-2022.
Capistrano Ana Maria V. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Benny R. Capistrano. Meliosa Frances Tracy M. with high honors. Parent, Mrs. Marie Franz Cindy M. Kanya. Obilio Dingdong Jr. S. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Dingdong O. Obilio Sr. Tabion Willie Ann N. with high honors. Parent, Engineer Wilfredo T. Tabion. Carmesis Rai Ashley J. With high honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ryan S. Carmesis. De la Cruz Gina Lay K.D. With high honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Cedric L. De la Cruz. Aboy Kent Ernest B. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Robbie L. Aboy. Ambog Daniel Olive C. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Randy C. Ambog. Cesario Renverly T. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Villamor O. Cesario. Imanil Zyla May G. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ernie M. Imanil. Estiliore Giro M. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Milicio Alex S. Estiliore. Fonasher Gwen C. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Gerardo G. Fonasher. Ganeb Jillian May O. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Romuel R. Ganeb Sr. Gulia Jonella B. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Darwin L. Gulia. Gutay Curdy Clyde H. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Florencio O. Gutay. Mina Princess Ina G. With honors, parents, Mrs. Marivic G. Mina. Morales Micah Carmela P. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Carlos P. Morales. Peralta Sofia Margaret C. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Vladimir J. C. Peralta. Ramos Princess Diana A. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Randy G. Ramos. Sibayan Daphne Shin M. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Raul C. Sibayan. Tunggol Angelica Samantha O. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Arnolfo C. Tunggol. Bacani Queen Ashley C. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rolando O. Bacani. Bay Juni R. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jungsu O. Bay. Baldoza Maryjoy E. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Gilbert G. Baldoza. Cariño Chanel M. With honors, parents, Mrs. Maria Lourdes A. Marquesis. Corpus Jessica C. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jason A. Corpus. Corpus Maria Richly D. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rinaldo G. Corpus. Doza Bianca Lian D. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Bienvenido V. Doza. Fabilico Neil Lester O. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Nestor O. Fabilico. Falsis Juliana Andrea D. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Perfecto B. Falsis Jr. Faustino Francine V. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Franklin S. Faustino. Galvan Merly V. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Angelo J. Galvan. Hamon Jomar C. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Milo B. Hamon. Javier Earl Cristan A. With honors, parents, Engineer and Mrs. Christian F. Javier. Legaspi Jana Jirel G. With honors, parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jerry R. Ligaspi. Magindra Johanna Angeline G. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Muhadir C. Magindra. Matias Marjorie L. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Danilo A. Matias. Obidoza Marian Joy A. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Angelito F. Obidoza. Ortiz Lian Gabriel G. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Brian D. Ortiz. Tungpalan Cuenfe A. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ray G. Tungpalan. Valen Stephanie Shane C. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Carlo G. Valen. Yu Cyril D. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Christopher T. Yu. Aaron Nicole Z. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Roberto A. Aron. Balbin Mark Aaron C. With honors. Parent, Mrs. Maria Cristina C. Balbin. Baniked Jasmine Jean V. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Juan C. Baniked III. Berganyo Angel May Nicole. With honors. Parent, Mrs. Melanie Julian. Biascan Helen Joy V. With honors. Parent, Mrs. Marisa V. Capistrano. Kayaban Rian Anjali L. With honors. Parent, Mrs. Jacqueline Kayaban. Ching Marcos Nathan R. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mark M. Ching. Coloma Rica Berlin N. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Roderick F. Coloma. Dumaging Jeremy Ian V. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Renato M. Dumaging. Hasan Salma Sami M. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Sami Abdullah M. Salma. Hernandez Joan Marie B. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jimmy F. Hernandez. Hernandez Roan B. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rufo M. Hernandez. Medinilia Jelly Ann. With honors. Parents, Mrs. Elvira G. Medinilia. Ormilia Marinel C. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rennie M. Ormilia. Pasis Christine M. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mario L. Pasis. Pimentel John Marvin P. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Giovanni B. Pimentel. Raimundo Chiara Shanesa S. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Dean Alvin G. Raimundo. Sugitan Samantha Nicole F. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Juven L. Sugitan. Tesorero Jasmine B. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Joel Q. Tesorero. Vergara Stephanie Dimple R. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Roel A. Vergara. Abuan Aliana L. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Alan B. Abuan. Arquero Gian G. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mario L. Arquero. Asho Fatima R. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Julius Cesar O. Asho. Awas Ezekiel Josh M. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Edward D. Awas. Balbin Christina Zoe M. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jegos G. Balbin. Cabarubias Aris Rainier. With honors. Parents, Mrs. Aliw G. Cabarubias. Poderias Eunice D. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Freddy F. Poderias. De la Cruz Ian Wendell P. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Cipriano L. De la Cruz Jr. De los Reyes Dominic T. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Dominador O. De los Reyes. De Lima Crisabel V. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Robinson M. De Lima. Lacaden Mark Joshua J. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mark Anthony C. Lacaden. Liwanag Lizelle Marie. With honors. Parents, Mrs. Merlin O. Liwanag. Lozano Patrick Giggs M. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Edmundo L. Lozano. Mabalot Brini C. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Brinjoy Q. Mabalot. Mabitasan Justin Kint M. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Benson E. Masindo. Medinilia Julie Ann. With honors. Parents, Mrs. Elvira G. Medinilia. Mindavia Marco Antonio M. With honors. Parents, Mrs. Wenny Marquez. Mingoy Aliyah D. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Kevin A. Mingoy. Nabor Von Ivan M. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Gilbert Nabor. Nazaro Shiloh V. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Samson E. Nazaro. Ocampo Juliana Denise F. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Danny P. Ocampo. Pamor Gerson II R. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Gerson P. Pamor. Peralta Castrina L. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Carlo M. Peralta. Pineda Jerby Boy P. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jerry F. Pineda. Romero Jomer G. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Joel B. Romero. Soriano Daphne Ann F. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Emilio P. Soriano Jr. Tabukol Matt Ian G. With honors. Parents, Mrs. Lucila G. Tabukol. Adlus Clark Gerald N. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Gregorio R. Adlus. Ancheta Adrian F. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Agosto R. Ancheta. Banikad Kinji T. With honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jor C. Baniked. Kabangisan Hannah Grace S. With honors. Parent, Mrs. Rosie Santos. Cabe Josea Christian B. With honors. Parent, Mrs. Christine B. Cabe. Carbonell Jester Christian M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Lyndon M. Carbonell. De la Cruz R.J. D. with honors. Parent, Mrs. Myrna D. De la Cruz. De la Cruz Justin Clyde D. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rodolfo A. De la Cruz. Dichoso Ria May Q. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jason D. Dichoso. Distor Charles Benedict P. with honors. Parents, Mrs. Catherine P. Distor. Domingo Rizalin A. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Roland M. Domingo. Imbat Precious D.Ann D. with honors. Parents, Mrs. Mary Ann D. Imbat. Garcia Yesha May D. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hipolito E. Garcia. Gaudia Rica May I. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Angelito P. Gaudia. Guanyezo Denzel B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Owen C. Guanyezo. Laderas Nehemiah Char Luis R. with honors. Parents, Miss Eloisa P. Rupisan. Laranan Sushimi M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Angelito S. Laranan. Lumboy Alina E. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Benjamin T. Lumboy Jr. Lumboy Ralph Cedric D. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Roberto P. Lumboy. Ocampo Shirel W. with honors. Parents, Mrs. Cheryl W. Ocampo. Fogako Dennis Nigel G. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Benedicto S. Fogako. Opiniano Dylan T. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Anthony R. Opiniano. Jorge Ira J. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Gerald B. Jorge. Ortiz Jeremy Cyril P. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Joel C. Ortiz. Padilla Joshua Y. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rolando R. Padilla. Quijado Jester C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jason P. Quijado. Ramirez Aiden Rowie S. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mark Oliver S. Ramirez. Tangalin Richel O. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Marlon M. Tangalin. Obungen Jelaine T. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. James Mark O. Obungen.
Here are the Grade 9 Academic Excellence Awardees for school year 2021-2022.
Funashare Charles Angelo D. with high honors. Parent, Miss Josephine G. Funashare. Mogar Athena May D. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Sulamin R. Mogar. Binse Joel Zypher N. with high honors. Parents, BM Attorney Noel C. Binse and Jocelyn M. Norico. Francisco Tricia C. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Edgar E. Francisco. Maningding Jenny Rose M. with high honors. Parent, Mrs. Melanie M. Maningding. Suleta Nicole Joy B. with high honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ronald P. Suleta. Bartolini John Andre N. with honors. Parent, Miss Maricel Bartolini. Belena Brianna Chloe N. with honors. Parent, Mrs. May Joy N. Belena. Katabay Rosemary Joy O. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ramel R. Katabay. Lomboy Desiree Ann E. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. German Lomboy. Tome Nathaniel Justin S. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jefferson Y. Tome. Abelia Joanna Marie G. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. German Q. Abelia. Antalan Eden Joy M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Edgardo E. Antalan. Bulicer Sheena Grace O. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Sunny A. Bulicer. Burgos G. O. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rostom D. Burgos. Carmeses Raya Alisa J. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ryan S. Carmeses. Corporation Bernice R. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Benedict O. Carpo. Ceron Reynold A. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Arnold C. Ceron. Hayasaka Yuka E. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Amasa Hayasaka. Liantos Hilary M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jojo M. Liantos. Mina Mark Joseph V. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rodelio C. Mina. Sibayan Loreto Jr. E. with honors. Parent, Mrs. May Ethel E. Sibayan. Villanueva Jofer F. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jonathan G. Villanueva. Zoleta Melojane with honors. Parent, Mrs. Melanie Zoleta. Almaquer Eloisa May M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Eugenio T. Almaquer. Amoyo Ashley Rayan C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rene M. Amoyo. Bermal Ilamay R. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Roy U. Bermal. Cachero Chrysaline Marie B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Alejandro P. Cachero Jr. Campos Rian Althea L. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Robinson P. Campos. Carino Micaela Joy M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mark James L. Carino. Caicedo Jenny Rose M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Augusto Caicedo. Estanilia Sheila May O. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. June M. Estanilia. Mabalot Maria Clarice B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Feliciano Q. Mabalot Jr. Resmenia Stephanie C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Justine T. Resmenia. Romano Zara Vanessa Y. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ding Romano. Urbano Jeremiel U. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Manalo C. Urbano Jr. Villar Roan Nicole T. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Bayani B. Villar. Aboy Tiffany M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mark Anthony L. Aboy. Aramin Aryan Jen O. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ryan A. Aramin. Banikad John Ralph V. with honors. Guardian, Miss Imelda Cancino. Domingo Kisara H. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Dixon G. Domingo. Guerrero Queen Elizabeth H. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Alvin M. Guerrero. Hernandez Eliza Kathleen A. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Emmanuel C. Hernandez. Montemayor Gwen Louis G. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Erwin B. Montemayor. Neveras Kate Sandra B. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Chris Brian O. Neveras. Raimundo Angus Hadriel S. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Dean Alvin G. Raimundo. Saldua Gretchel D. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Randall C. Saldua. Sibayan Anadin G. with honors. Parent, Mrs. Diana G. Sibayan. Tamin Mariah Luisa H. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Janelle V. Tamin. Abuan Krisha Jane Wileen V. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Wilfredo B. Abuan Jr. Agabao Jasmine Claire C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Arturo Agabao. Cadorna Franco Antonio D. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Frank Anthony R. Cadorna. Castillo Maybelline F. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Leonard L. Castillo. De la Cruz Ira Joyce A. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Alan S. de la Cruz. Escalante Stephanie Jane R. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Freddie R. Escalante. Fernandez Maria Elcia Jana N. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Eusebio C. Fernandez. Gonzalez Jehan L. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Edwin E. Gonzalez. Mabutas Leami C. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Normie A. Mabutas. Mangawang Hina Kailin M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rudy M. Mangawang Jr. Manlangit Seferina S. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Alfredo P. Manlangit Jr. Marqueta Elaine Allison O. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Eduardo T. Marqueta. Nesperos Riley Janine L. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ryan O. Nesperos. Olo Hazel Ann M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Geronimo B. Olo Sr. Onato John S. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. John B. Onato. Ong Giselle M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Joel O. Ong. Hortaleza Rufa May D. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Joel C. Hortaleza. Pascua Irene M. with honors. Parents, Mr. and Mrs. Vilmar B. Pascua.
To give her message of thanks, let us welcome the Head Teacher 3 of Filipino Department, Mrs. Tricia N. Isdeliore.
My warmest greetings to all. On behalf of San Quintin National High School faculty and staff, congratulations to all the academic awardees for this school year 2021-2022. Being one of the members of the awards committee, I would like to extend my appreciations to all of you for doing your best in your studies in spite of the hurdles and limitations you have encountered since the pandemic started. The arduous journey of learning that you experienced starting from the first quarter to fourth quarter posed challenges, and that many of you felt hesitations and uncertainties on working with your learning task. Yet, you knuckled down and went extra mile, showing how persistent and determined you were just to finish all the requirements and other learning activities. Thank you for being compliant and for being responsible and dedicated learners. Truly, you are budding achievers, and I would say that you keep on loving learning and keep on striving for success, because if you do, surely reward will always await you. Mga minamahal naming mga mag-aaral, huwag sana nating kalimutang kilalanin ang mga naging instrumento sa inyong pagkatuto. Ang inyong mga mahal na magulang, kamag-anak, kaibigan, mga magigiting at mahuhusay na guro, at ang mga iba pa nating stakeholders na nagbahagi at tumulong para sa ikatatagumpay ng panuroang ito. Ibigay natin ang ating pagpupugay sa kanila. Dear learners, may you continue to keep your passion alive as you strive hard for the realization of your dreams. Your San Quintin National High School family believes that you are all set for success. Keep soaring high, keep reaching for the stars, and always keep your faith to our dear God. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay po tayong lahat.